Along a highway road cradled between fruit orchards and vineyards stands a cider tasting bar. The smell of fresh apples and joyful chattering fills the air. Gowan's Heirloom Cider, a family-run business about an hour south of Fort Bragg, has been flourishing since 1876. Fifth-generation farmer and cider maker Sharon Gowan says they recently opened up the outdoor cider bar during the pandemic.
We started making hard cider about 10 years ago. Some of our hard ciders won best in the world's largest cider competitions. And we were super excited. We got to open up an outdoor tasting room 2 years ago during the pandemic. So people can come and try our cider from our taps in our bar and sit amidst these historic trees. And it's lots of fun. They're not very soft. They're pretty hard, but they're sweet and they're tart.
Sharon married into the family 30 years ago and has 2 sons, who are the current 6th generation. The 200-acre apple farm has over 100 different varieties and about 11,000 trees. The family continues to harvest apples from some of the exact same trees as their ancestors, some being 150 years old.
In the 1990s, we had some researchers that came by, and they were shocked to find out that we had this apple. It's called a Sierra Beauty apple, and they thought it was extinct. They'd been searching for it for decades.
Native to California, the Sierra Beauty has good acidity, natural baking spices, and is sweet, making it a desirable apple for pastry chefs.
The fun thing is that we've been able to bring in so many different kinds of apples from all around the world. And if apples are happy in one kind of climate, they're often happy in another.
They also have Macintosh from Canada, Granny Smith from New Zealand, and Astrakhan from Russia. The farm also grows pears and figs. Their fruits are grown organically. Sharon explains how everything stays on the farm, from growing to packaging.
We harvest the apples, we press them into juice, we ferment them and bottle them right here on the same property so nothing leaves. And then any waste, like the pulp after the pressing, we spread that around on the farm so that our native wild bees can also have some of that, and that helps them in the fall to grow. So we hope to not have to bring in honeybees because we've been supporting the wild bee population. And they're so pretty when you get them all shined up, right?
After picking, the apples go through a machine for washing before it's pressed into large fermentation tanks.
There's a lot of challenges to small businesses, and especially small farmers. I think that looking at what maybe the next thing could be, and for us in our generation, the next thing was doing hard cider, because happily people were starting to wake up to how fun hard cider was. And so I think that's been the new thing that helped this generation keep going. And previously it was taking horses and wagons over to the coast for a day, or driving the new pickup truck across the 10-year-old Golden Gate Bridge back in the 40s, I think that was. So it's everybody kind of looking for how to keep it going and people willing to work together.
They also bottle the cider on site once every few months.
And that's why it's so bubbly.
The current matriarch of the farm is 97-year-old Josephine Gowan. She took some time to share fond memories of her apple picking days.
I had a women's crew of about 16 women, and the men worked in the mills in the forest, and we picked the apples. The women and I picked the apples, and I was a pretty good apple picker.
Now she walks about an hour around the orchard every day. Her favorites are Gravenstein, Sierra Beauty, and Astrakhan. She notes that Jonathan's are great for eating and cooking.
It's an apple that I could use for everything. It fries beautifully. It makes a beautiful fried apple. It makes a good sauce. It makes a good pie. It makes a good eating apple. It doesn't keep real long, but it keeps pretty good.
It's very ripe and it's in season.
The orchard gets lots of help from the young, too. Shalisha welcomes guests at the fruit stand. She cuts apple and pear samples for visitors.
And make sure that the apples are fresh and looking good for the people that come to our tasting rooms. And I also do apple tastings and pear tastings so that people know what they're buying before they actually pay for it.
Shalisha enjoys talking to people, hearing their stories, and learning new things.
I had a guy from Brazil come into our tasting room, and he came and he sat down, and I had these Asian pears. He said where he's from they're called a pear apple, and he said that he calls them papples. And I thought that that was such a cool thing and something so different.
The farm is open year-round. Besides selling apples, cider, and slushies on the property, they also ship the fruits to select markets and schools. Every year, they sell about 10,000 cases of cider. Eileen Ang, NTD News, Philo, California.